Hi, good morning. This is Dr. Janson, and today's video is about how to handle patients from far away, which is different from handling patients that live nearby because they can easily come back to get their orthotics adjusted if they're not comfortable. But these patients this weekend are all from amazingly far away. So we have the UK here. This is a British patient. This is a patient from Florida. And she's coming Tuesday all the way from Florida just to get her orthotics. And this is a young man from Chicago who has family in New York, but he's flying to get his orthotics. And this man came from Germany, and this is the one I want to talk about in this video. He's remarkably intelligent, had a real good sense of biomechanics. He actually had figured out his diagnosis, which was really, really fun for me. That the patient understood what was wrong, but he had bad luck in Germany. He had several orthotics made, and none of them helped him. And that is a common mistake that I fell into the trap of. Probably, I could guess where those German orthotic makers went wrong, because I was tempted to go that way too. So I'm going to sit upstairs later and talk to you about that, like how you can fall into a trap. But we cannot, patient coming from so far away, we cannot afford to make a mistake. We have to do the right thing and make sure the patient is comfortable. And this patient came from Connecticut, 4-hour drive each way, 8 hours. Actually, the Connecticut patient travels more than the Florida patient. So there's like a 2.5-hour, 3 hours to Florida. So 6 hours, and this poor lady, 8 hours, but still it's pretty far away. I also have to take that into consideration when I'm making the orthotics. I can't take any chances like putting too much support on it and the patient can't tolerate it, for example. So now let's go to the German fella here. He saw videos on YouTube, my videos on YouTube, and he said, oh, maybe this person could help me. He was very frustrated. He's a bodybuilder, and he's really into fitness. He's in great physical shape. And he really wanted to have, a good biomechanical result with his orthotics. He was very frustrated. So he believed that I could help him. And I am sure I can help him because I know exactly what to do. But let's talk about his diagnosis. Now, it's forefoot varus, and I'm going to explain to you what that is. So it's a one-plane deformity. Now, I have never made a video on this because it's an extremely common problem. And I have seen many wonderful orthotics that handle this problem very well. So, anything that can be handled by some of the other podiatrists who are making orthotics, I haven't made a video about that because of it. But let's talk about it anyways. It's really one of the most common reasons to need orthotics. Commonly, it's called flexible flat foot. So let me show you. Now, I also took 2 kind of casts of the German patient because he lives so far away. I need as much information. I've never met him before. So I took 2 kind of casts of him. I took a foam footprint kind of cast, which is semi-weight bearing. Your foot is if you're walking. And then I also took a plaster of Paris mold of his foot while he was sitting. So that's non-weight bearing impression. And this way I can see his foot, in 2 different shapes, as if he's walking and then not walking, like as if he's taking steps. So let's look at his plaster of Paris cast over here. So here's his plaster of Paris cast. So this was done not weight bearing. So now if I keep his heel bone perpendicular to the ground, so we're keeping his heel very straight. You see I made a line there. I don't know if you can see it. I put it on the other side too. You can see it there. So we want that line to be perpendicular to the ground. So hold it. But when you have that straight, you see that this part of his foot is not touching the ground. So that means that there's an angle between the back of the foot and the front of the foot like that. So if I were to put weight here and push this down so his big toe touches the ground, you would see, let me do it in this plane. If I push this down as if he's taking a step, you see how that angle is now, going out that way. It's heading away from his body. And that, when your foot does that, that's called pronation. So it's flat foot. So they call it flexible flat foot because when he's sitting, it looks like he has an okay arch. But then when he's standing, this whole thing comes down and then his foot looks very flat. And what he noticed was that when he was when he puts the weight on his foot and his foot goes flat like that his knee comes inward and he feels a strain on his hip. Now remember, he's a bodybuilder, so he's, doing whatever he's doing like this, but he's feeling his knee go like this, so he doesn't have the power. He loses the power of his leg when his foot is pronating like that. So that's why he's very interested in having orthotics that can maintain the rear foot and the forefoot together in the same angle. The other fun thing about him was that he actually figured out that what his big toe coming up like that when he stands, he needs somehow to get it down. So he suggested that I put plaster under the big toe joint. And that's to change the foot in a small surface area. But remember what I said, he's going to be far, far away. So if I put something in a very small surface area, it might be uncomfortable. So a better way to do it is to put it over a large surface area. Now, I put this cast here. This is an orthotic I already made. Now, she lives sort of close by. She lives in Westchester County, so it's only 2 hours drive. So, at this point, compared to people coming like, 2,000 miles or whatever, this is a nearby patient. So now this is an example of one that I did add material around the big toe joint, but she has a bunion. She has a dysfunctional joint here. It doesn't work well. A bunion means that the toe is not in the joint anymore. It's like dislocated like this. So the toe is sitting like at an angle. So this joint is not functioning well. Now with the German fella, his foot is very mobile. So a lot of times it's very frustrating to podiatrists to say, oh, for this problem, hypermobile foot, we're going to do a Kirby skive. But, it's like a flow chart. You have to say, yes, but if you're going to do this, you better have a mobile foot, so you can't have arthritis in the foot. Well, this guy's extremely fit. He was in the Army for many years, and he's very strong, and his joints are fantastic. He's very healthy. So I can get away with this, and it's predictable too, because he lives far away. So I need something very predictable. Now in this case here, this joint does not work well. And this is also, it doesn't look like it. This looks like a really high arch, but this is also was a patient with a hypermobile flat foot. So you can see how I'm handling these two patients differently, because this one lives nearby. And if she has any trouble with that, I'll just make her come back in a few weeks so she can't tolerate. And I can, decrease the support around it a little bit. Or I can fill this in, on a follow-up when I make an adjustment. So I can change that if she has any trouble, because it is pinpointing the pressure there. I don't know if you can, I'm really pinpointing the pressure on that. You see that? So, that might be a problem, but it might be great. But I have to see. But this one I'm going to do differently. So I'm going to do this on the rear foot. I'm going to work on the back of his foot, and I'm going to change the angle of the entire column, this entire column. So instead of it coming up, because I'm going to change the angle on the heel, that's how I'm going to make it straight. So I'm going to do it in the back of the orthotic. So I'm going to carve this away. Now, carving this part of the castaway is called a Kirby skive, and it was invented by Dr. Kevin Kirby. I've met Dr. Kirby. I had lunch with him at a lunch table at the Dr. Schuster Biomechanical Conference in New York City once. So I've met him, and he's an amazing, amazing biomechanist. He really, really knows his stuff. And what we're doing is, by changing the angle back here, what we're going to do is we're going to change the axis with which the foot rotates around. Okay, now I'm taking a little water break. I'm drinking some water. I always tell you guys, stay hydrated. So drink water. Anyway, so what I was saying now about rear foot corrections versus forefoot corrections. So in the back of the foot versus the front of the foot is this horrible dilemma in biomechanics in the United States. And I just read an article, and actually it was by Kevin Kirby, and he was talking about how advanced is American biomechanics compared to the rest of the world, particularly Europe. And I would say that American biomechanics are very good, especially if you're having an argument like that, like rear foot versus forefoot corrections. And I treat a lot of European patients like I am this week, you know. So I would say American biomechanics are as good as Europe, let's say that. Anyway, so the argument is, you know, should you correct a hypermobile forefoot by putting the support in the front of the orthotic or in the back of the orthotic? Now, my very first biomechanical teacher was Dr. William Sanner, and I think he actually practices still, but what a long time ago, 40 years ago. And he was from California. So the California school of thought, which is Dr. Kirby too, he's from California, is that the rear foot controls the forefoot, so you get the most bang for the buck by correcting the rear foot. So Dr. Sanner said that for hypermobile flexible flat foot, hypermobile flexible flat foot, you would put like a nice rear foot post on it and keep it kind of neutral to a little bit inverted. And that was his answer to what to do. And then the next year, we had other doctors who were New York School, East Coast, which is you put the support in the front of the orthotic to control the rear foot. So, but I was already, just Dr. Sanner was first, so I don't know, my brain just, you know, really understood controlling the rear foot. So I was sort of like more ascribed to California style biomechanics at that point. And then, then I was making, I did my residency, and then years later I'm making orthotics. This is like 1992. And following Dr. Sanner's model of biomechanics, and Root is like the grandfather of biomechanics, also rear foot oriented. So I was doing that, having good results. And then I went, and this is like maybe 10 years ago, so I've been doing orthotics for 20, 30 years, and went to a conference called the Richard Schuster Memorial Biomechanical Conference. And there I really heard all over again that the forefoot controls the rear foot, and Dr. Schuster liked to put a large wedge on the front of the orthotic in the forefoot to control hypermobile flat foot. And when I saw that, I was shocked, and I remembered that I had learned that in school, but I hadn't been doing it for 20 years or whatever, 30 years. And then I thought about it all weekend until I had a terrible headache. I had such a headache because I was thinking of all the patients that I had worked on over all these years. And was I wrong? Maybe I would have had more correction if I had been working with the forefoot. So then over the next weeks and months, I started adjusting orthotics and making orthotics according to that model. And then I had very poor results. I did not have good results with it. So I went back to my original, rear foot oriented model. And I think part of the reason why is because if you want to work on the forefoot, you have to have a healthy, flexible foot, and then it could work. There are hybrid models of forefoot versus rear foot, like Dr. Dannenberg, for example. So what he does is he puts a big forefoot wedge, but he puts a cutout right underneath the big toe joint so it can sort of sink down a little bit. So it's sort of a hybrid model between forefoot and rear foot. So this is where I am now, is that I realize that, making orthotics is like a flow chart. Okay, here's the diagnosis. But does the patient have a healthy joints that have a good range of motion, or does the patient have an arthritic joints with a poor range of motion, like the cast I showed you, the lady with the bunion, So, and then you say, okay, now next step of decisions. So it really gets down to creating a flow chart of making orthotics. And the reason why I'm making this video is because on top of it, and what I mean is, like, say you had a man with a really big belly, and his center of gravity was so far forward, he's not even walking on his heels. So if you put a rear foot post, it's not going to do anything. You know what I mean? So you have to take all these things into consideration when you choose the orthotic. And the other thing, where does the patient live? So Dr. Richard Blake, who I also have met, and he knows me, does a wonderful rear foot control called the inverted cast, where he adds a lot of material up on the front of the orthotic. And that could have a good result because it's it's rear foot controlled with forefoot, kind of a hybrid. But the problem is that if that, you might have to make the orthotic again, or you really have to adjust it. So there's the problem with the far away patient. I can't take that chance. So anyways, but the other thing I have to take into consideration is, where does the patient live? So I thought that would be interesting to think about. All right, thanks for watching the video. I hope it wasn't too scientific and boring. Okay, see you in the next video.